We are Food Fix Solutions, and today we are going to present our multi-level approach to addressing the economic impact of food waste in our community, country, and across the globe. As you all know, the economic impact of food waste is massive. More food than ever before ends up in trash cans instead of on the plates and tables of those hungry across the world. We are confident that our multifaceted approach, through our research gathered, prototypes designed, and action plans constructed, we can help alleviate the tremendous burden that food waste possesses, and hopefully, through our presentation, you will come to appreciate and adopt the multi-level approach that we've endorsed. Thank you. Let's begin. For the first part of our project, one of the major areas we needed to focus on was the impact that local restaurants have on our food waste economic issues. Unfortunately, local restaurants account as a third top producer of food waste, which is not surprising when you look at the restaurant industry as a whole. Unfortunately, due to the fast-paced and quick-moving nature of the service industry, it is inevitable that a number of meals that otherwise are suitable to eat end up straight in the garbage can. Let's talk about why this is. There are three main areas that have been identified both in our secondary research as well as my discussion and interview with a former restaurant manager as the top producers of food waste in the restaurant industry. One of those is the back-of-house mistakes, when the cooks otherwise make a mistake, drop food on the floor, or somehow the food ends up unfit to eat. There's also front-of-house mistakes. In this case, servers which take down orders incorrectly or are unable to get the food to the customers in a timely or appropriate fashion. And of course, one of the most challenging to address, customer waste. These would be customers that have no intention of taking their food home or finishing their meal, so a large amount of their food ends up straight in the garbage can. Now, how can we address a problem of this scope within an industry that is so challenged to make sure that hungry diners are fed to the highest satisfaction to ensure repeat business? In my discussion with Aaron Rodriguez, a former restaurant manager, it was made very clear that amongst management, ownership, and even the staff, customers receiving a satisfactory meal was the highest priority. If the customer did not enjoy their meal or did not finish their meal, that was of no concern so long as they paid their bill and came back for more. In this area, that becomes the top priority and the driving motivation. That's why back-of-house small mistakes or even small mistakes from front of house get tossed in the trash so that the customers receive the highest quality food to make sure that they ensure repeat business. In this area, owners and managers are focused on customer repeat visits as being one of the driving profit motives and forces. However, through our comprehensive methods, our goal is to educate managers and owners that trash and food ending up in the trash is just as important as keeping customers happy for their bottom line and reducing the economic cost of food waste. To satisfy this, we have come up with a one-two punch in which we're hoping that we can really deliver to local restaurants the materials needed to empower them to tackle the economic food costs facing their establishment and industry. The first part of this would be helpful materials posted within the restaurant near a lot of the other helpful materials such as instructions, OSHA requirements, as well as hand washing and other preparatory materials to be able to educate and be a constant reminder to the staff that the economic cost of food waste can be just as important as the customer experience. If a customer walks out the door having enjoyed their meal but thrown most of it in the garbage after much of it has already ended up in the garbage in trying to prepare them the perfect meal, you have still suffered a huge impact to your bottom line. And it's part of the reason that restaurants are the third highest contributor to the food waste issue facing us economically. So, materials posted within view of all staff should better educate managers, owners, and the staff as a whole to tackle this issue themselves. But we know that that's not enough. So the second part of our design is a prototype trash collection system. in which trash cans across the restaurant are color-coded to ensure that management and owners are able to figure out where the trash is coming from along those three different areas: the back of house, front of house, or customer trash experience. So, when back of house messes up a meal or something comes out wrong, that garbage ends up in a different location than when front of house or when the customer deposits that food into the receptacle. As a result, managers and owners can be better informed to make better decisions about where to address the issues within their establishment. This is paramount because every restaurant operates in such a different community, a different time frame, and with differing levels of business. So a one-size-fits-all approach is not accurate and not applicable here. We believe that these two ideas, further educating the people in charge making these decisions, as well as an actionable plan in which they can track and better educate themselves about the very specifics of where their restaurant is facing challenges, can synthesize into one whole that will allow restaurants to better tackle the economic cost of food waste and reduce the impact and reduce the third place position that they are occupying in the contribution of economic food waste to our country.
Hello, my name is Diana, and I will be talking about how state and federal governments have a previously approached combating food waste across the United States. So after researching, we can see that there are two major categories the government likes to approach. So first we see education, which includes spreading awareness of losses, and reduction goals, which are the goals that they have based on the findings. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 30 to 40% of the food supply is never eaten, and about 70% of this ends up in landfills. So to tackle this, in 2015, the USDA, alongside the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, decided to pass the Food Loss and Waste Reduction Goal. The goal here is to work with local communities, businesses, and organizations so each institution creates their own reduction goal in their own community, so overall they can reach the goal of cutting food waste in half by 2030. Additionally, the federal government has sought out ways to prevent food waste through education. One example is in 2021, the USDA again passed the School Food Recovery Act. Here, the goal is to provide grants and technical assistance to local education agencies, such as schools, so that they can implement, similar to the first goal, their own reduction goals. They're also encouraged to find ways to report and prevent food waste within the educational institutions. So our goal for our final solution is to create a similar approach to these mentioned. So in one of our prototypes, in the pamphlet prototype, you can see that we created an educational pamphlet that will be handed out to local governments so that they can see food loss in their community and federally. So our goal here is so that our reader, the government, becomes aware of the economic losses of food waste in their area. Secondly, the plan is for them to go to the website, which is mentioned on the back of the pamphlet, and here they can find a tab called Guides, where they can create their own personal waste reduction goals through our website. If we get enough governments to use our prototype, we can be sure to achieve our goal.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and today I will be talking about how food waste affects inflation. So, over the last couple of decades, inflation has risen drastically, both in regards to food waste and in general, especially in America. In years past, many organizations and health centers have conducted surveys that show how food waste and inflation affects the average American consumer. Inflation affects the consumer's grocery shopping habits and tactics for budgeting and saving money. One of the many organizations that has conducted a survey on this topic is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, also known as the NHANES. They conduct a survey every year on a 2-year cycle to tens of thousands of people. They usually collect data from about 500 of the people that have been surveyed. So in 2020, the NHANES surveyed about 40,000 people in the age range of 31 to 70 years old. 61% of the respondents were in or had already graduated from college. And 65% of the respondents were low income. So the results of the survey showed that about 1/4 of the average consumer's daily food budget ends up being wasted. The daily capita food expenditure was shown to be about $13.27. So 27% of this amount is wasted, and 14% is inedible, leaving only about 59% to be consumed. 72 billion pounds of food are lost per year. Each year, about 40% of food is wasted. When it comes to holiday celebrations, inflation makes things much more difficult. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Economics at the University of Illinois recently conducted a study to show how the increase of food prices affected the food choices people made for their family holiday meals. In November of 2022, over 1,000 people were surveyed. The results of the survey showed that 61% of consumers expected inflation to affect their holiday meal. The survey also gathered information regarding how consumers handled the higher food prices. So the results show that 47% of consumers are utilizing deals and discounts, 35% of consumers are reducing the amount of food just in general that they will serve, 25% of consumers are reducing specifically the amount of meat that they will be serving. 24% of consumers are reducing the number of guests that they will have at their holiday meal. And 16% of consumers are asking their guests to provide the food that they will be eating at their holiday meal. And 16% of consumers are utilizing government assistance, and 8% of consumers are just canceling their holiday meal just entirely. In the last year, food prices have risen by over 12%. So prices for food consumed at home have risen by 11%, and foods consumed not at home have been risen by 6%. The food price index shows how inflation-adjusted prices of food have changed over the last 165 years. This is the oldest food index available. So in the 20th century, there have been 3 agricultural commodity price cycles, each lasting 30 years.
Another big issue surrounding food waste and its problems is transportation. Transportation plays a huge role in food waste and how food gets from point A to point B. While doing research about transportation and food, we found 4 big interesting key factors that show why transportation is something we have to pay close attention to. First, we can start with government regulations. When it comes down to transporting goods and foods from foreign countries into the United States, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has to ensure that all foods are safe and sanitary. This leads to our second issue. This means that there is a significant delay. This delay leads to a couple things happening. One being foods like fish and poultry to expire as soon as it hits the shelves. This can be a huge issue. In an effort to resolve this, companies have resorted to using refrigerated trucks. And let me tell you now, refrigerated trucks are not cheap. Now they are increasing costs in an effort to ensure the foods on our shelves are fresh. but to our knowledge, it costs about twice as more than a regular cabin truck. How these trucks work is that they have a specific temperature that allows food products to be kept as fresh as possible. Another key factor is gas prices. Gas prices have gone up and have kept up. As we know, gas prices have been up. This has cost transportation companies a lot of money. This is another key factor that is causing foods in shelves to increase in prices as well. As we are also seeing a decrease in sales due to its prices raises, now causing food to go bad. COVID-19 has affected so many people. It's played a huge role in how transportation costs, food costs, and simply the cost of living. This is simply because many people are not able to work due to health concerns and other factors. Now we are seeing companies have cut down and decreased the amount of places they can deliver to. Now, on how to find a solution. As a team, we come up with a marketing campaign. We want this to reach out all ages, and audiences that it can get. But first, we have to start with our trusted locals. We want to educate them about how transportation is affecting food waste. We have come up with a strategic media campaign to show how food is being wasted because of transportation. We want to raise awareness to this issue. The significant markups on foods and goods are steering everyone away from big corporate food distributors. If the volume of sales goes down, so will the amount of food that goes onto the shelves that are eventually being wasted. We want to put an end to this. We hope this has created a better understanding on why transportation plays a huge role. Thanks.
The United States has been dealing with national food waste and sustainability issues increasingly over the past couple decades. This is in large part due to the wasteful food culture that the United States has implemented and the lack of government policy. Over the years, the United States has had a culture where people waste food and receive large portions that don't necessarily reflect what they need. This stems all the way back to the 1800s with the Industrial Revolution, where once things became more abundant and supplies became more plentiful at a cheaper price, people could afford to spend more on goods that they didn't necessarily need. We see this specifically in the United States because in other countries such as Japan, they have a more conservative food culture where people are a lot less wasteful with their food and a lot less wasteful with the things that they buy. This can be seen in Japan's ranking in the Global Food Sustainability Index and how well they do when it comes to keeping food sustainability at a reasonable level and leading the nations in its lack of food waste. Another reason the US struggles with its food waste and sustainability is because of the lack of government policy. The lack of government policy in the United States does nothing to either proactively give people a reason to waste less food or implement punishments that would cause them to waste less food, such as fines or by just simply encouraging the education of food waste in schools. Countries such as Canada and Sweden have more strict policies that help cultivate that food culture where people are less wasteful. Not to mention that the United States citizens aren't as informed about food waste and sustainability as they should be. This is a problem in other countries such as Pakistan, Greece, etc. These country citizens, when taking surveys and things of that nature, reported that they never knew that food waste was a problem and that they were not as knowledgeable as they thought they should be. This issue is prevalent in the United States based on the US's food culture and is why that the United States should start implementing more strategies to combat food waste and increase sustainability. This is why my group argues that education is a very fundamental part of that. We believe that education and local government must be enforced in the preventing food waste and helping food sustainability. Food waste throughout the United States is a major issue, and me and my partners believe that we can offer a unique and innovative solution in order to solve it. Food waste in the United States is thought to become much, much worse if not handled in any manner respectively soon. Food waste has caused issues such as food droughts and global warming simply due to the large amount of wasted food and wasted products that come from food waste and the lack of sustainability. If we don't do anything, this can worsen global warming to the point where we have global issues decades down the line. So maybe not for our generation, but for the generation after us and the generation after them. That is why it is so important that we work together to create a sustainable solution to fix food waste in the United States.
Hi, my name is Michael Gear, and I'm going to be talking about how food waste affects the supply chain. To begin, I'm going to read something from ReFed. Now, according to ReFed, in 2021, surplus food cost the country $444 billion. Of this, 70% or $310 billion was due to food waste. Now, food waste occurs all throughout the supply chain from beginning to the end. I'm going to walk through each aspect of the supply chain and talk about what happens. I'm going to start with farms. Now, food loss starts at the production level. Low market prices and high harvest costs often make it too expensive for farmers to gather everything they're producing. And very strict cosmetic standards exclude average looking or not so average, not so good looking produce from being sold because a lot of customers are expecting to have this perfect looking produce. In addition to that, labor shortages are going to cause further challenges, and despite many farm-to-food bank efforts to recover this unharvested food, a lot of it is left on the fields and it's just going to waste. It's not being used or being eaten by people who actually need it. Now, the next step of the supply chain is going to be manufacturers. According to ReFed, a full 90% of surplus in food processing is byproduct. The peels, stems, bones, and other parts are not used in the main product, and production line waste. Now, the problem with this is that many of these trimmings, such as potato peels from French fry lines, are still edible, and the wide variety of products sold cause inefficiencies as well. And each time a production line is changed, it must be emptied and cleaned. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, we saw all these rigid processes that had a lot of issues, causing manufacturers to struggle to adjust their output to meet the needs of new customers with different product requirements. For example, we saw smaller milk cartons for consumers stuck at home rather than larger containers for industrial markets. Now, the next step of the supply chain process is your retailers, so your local grocery stores, for example. Now, at these grocery stores, we saw that customer demand for a variety and quality of food being readily available, strains inventory management and food purchasing. It can be difficult to change stocking practices or product sizes, especially when those practices are tied to a retailer's brand identity. For example, we have a lot of national brands like Whole Foods, Walmart, Target, etc. There can be different standards and different expectations at different parts of the US. Let's say the North and the South, for example. It's very difficult for these big national brands to adjust their logistics and their inventory management to meet the needs of each different region. In addition to that, high customer standards for freshness can lead businesses to dispose of safe, edible food based on the perception that it's past its prime. And in addition to that, also, day-level concerns account for more than 50% of food waste at the retail stage, according to ReFed. Now, the next part of the supply chain is going to be food service, so like the local restaurant. And similar to retailers, food service customers expect a variety and quality of food to be available. And in the case of fast food restaurants and other businesses with similar formats, customers expect it as soon as they place their order. So they don't want to wait. They don't want to make sure that the restaurants are using every part of the food. They want you to prepare the food as fast as possible, and if they have to wait, they'll go somewhere else and take their business with them. So a lot of businesses are pressured to try and make the food as quickly as possible and not concern themselves with waste. In addition to that, difficulty in forecasting, bulk purchasing, and improper storage can lead to waste, along with preparation techniques that can leave usable food behind. The majority of waste at the food service level is going to be a huge 70%, according to Refit. And this is due to plate waste for the customers who don't eat all that they're served or take from the buffet. So, for example, you think about a restaurant like Five Guys. You might go there and you might order a small fry, but they'll give you a big bag of fries. But the problem with that is customers are probably ordering a burger with that and also maybe a milkshake. So a lot of them are not going to eat the full bag of fries with a burger and milkshake. So all those potatoes got wasted on selling to a customer at an inflated price instead of going to people who actually need the food. Now, the final step of the supply chain are going to be your homes. This is where the majority of your food waste is going to come from. And this is due to poor food management. It leads to spoilage and ultimately drives food waste in homes. Many consumer purchases are unplanned, which can lead to over-purchasing, and many families are tempted into bulk purchases at places like Costco and Sam's Club, so that way they can save money on a per unit cost. Many consumers also lack the knowledge of how to repurpose ingredients and store food properly. Misunderstanding of date labels often lead consumers to throw away food before it's spoiled, and many consumers have limited access to food waste recycling programs and perceive barriers to composting at home. Now, in my next slide, I'm going to talk about a solution to help solve this, but ultimately, where most of this food waste is coming in is most people don't know how to properly plan out their week, and how much food they need to buy, what ingredients are needed, how to properly store those ingredients, and overall become the most efficient they can at doing that to help limit waste. And in my solution, the next slide, I'm going to talk about how we can possibly address that. Hi. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA for short, most people don't realize how much food they throw away every day. From watching leftovers to spoiled produce, to parts of fruits and vegetables that could be eaten or repurposed. Now, like I talked about in the previous slide, the majority of the food waste comes from homes. People don't know how to properly store or plan out their meals. They're buying too much from bulk places like Costco and Sam's Club, and they're also not knowing how to properly store it, so it spoils and goes bad faster than it should. Now, based on our extensive research, from doing multiple interviews, doing surveys, and various different forms of research like that, we put together a solution that we feel can best address this issue. That solution is going to be a food lab, which is essentially going to be a cooking class that we install in various different high schools all around the country. What this is going to do is going to serve a couple different purposes. The first one is to teach students how to properly cook, meaning how do you dice up vegetables, how do you cut up different fruits and vegetables, how do you saute a vegetable, how do you bake goods, how do you sear things. Things like that teaches kids how to get that skill of being able to properly cook. Then the next step will be to show them how to properly plan out a week's worth of groceries. So when they go to the grocery store, how do you plan out buying the correct number to prepare their dishes? And so they're not overbuying and buying a bunch of bulk, and what to watch out for in terms of how long something will last, so they know how often to buy it. Then the next step will be to try and properly store, show them in the kitchen where to store each item, what goes in the fridge, what goes in the cabinets, what goes in the countertop, things like that, so they know where each item should go, so they can properly last and they can be in the correct place. The overall goal of this idea and this solution is to help instill confidence into these young students, so that way they know that, hey, they have the ability to cook. It's not rocket science, it's not quantum physics. They have the ability to learn how to cook and properly cook their meals. And also we're teaching them how to properly plan out and buy their dishes and their food, and how to properly store it so they can become the most efficient they possibly can, and overall reduce the amount of food that they are wasting. In conclusion, the purpose of today's presentation was to talk about the economic impact that food waste has here in the United States. In today's presentation, we went over 6 main topics. We talked about how food waste impacts restaurants, inflation, government involvement, food sustainability across nations, transportation costs, and supply chain losses. In addition to that, we give you a couple recommendations on how you can solve these problems, such as having restaurant trash can bins labeled with recycling and food waste, so that with back of house staff can know where to properly put the food and recycling, and so they can keep track of how much food they are wasting. We talked about educational material such as websites and pamphlets, where you can educate people about the true economic costs that food waste has in our country. And we even gave a hands-on example, such as the food lab, where high school students could not only learn how to cook food, they can learn how to store it and prepare for a weekly grocery trip. In the end, I want to thank you for taking time to listen to our presentation today. I really hope you found it insightful and you learned a lot from it. We really appreciate you giving us this opportunity to do this research for you and put together this information from our primary, secondary research, as well as the incredible individuals and experts we had the opportunity to interview. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us or call us using the contact information at the beginning of our report. I wish you the best of luck in solving this very complex issue.